going to the F file, but he goes to the E file, which still makes perfect sense. He at some point wants to pile pressure on the bishop on E3. He can also play bishop to B8 and attack the knight on G3. So Hikaru's position looks excellent here. And watch out for bishop D6, right? Bishop B8, bishop D6, bishop B4.
That's a journey. Bishop B8, bishop D6, bishop to B4. Is that the tactical sequence the computer likes? Let's bring it up on the analysis board and find out. Indeed, he plays it, and the eval bar stays there. I think Robert spotted something key, everyone. And we saw that eval bar slip on the move rook A3. And I think Robert had that heads up to understand this is a serious threat, because when you take here and double the pawns, knight F5 is basically winning on the spot here. Too much pressure. So that means you got to... But in fact, MBL ends up allowing it, because if you move the knight, there would have been bishop D6 with tempo, followed by bishop B4, winning the exchange. So heads up fine from Hikaru. Rook A to A1. Now he plays queen D6, though.
Yeah, that...
Rather than just going for this idea. I thought this would be what Black wanted, but no.
I guess the bishop
what is the idea of
queen
D6? What?
In that line you're looking at where you take on G3, the bishop gets to E5. So that's probably what...
Takes here. I forgot the rook was over defending this because the queen's on it. So bishop F4, bishop E5, and white is actually totally fine. So that's the point. Hikaru plays queen D6, which threatens knight F5. The knight is pinned because queen H2 would be mate.
But this is...
Look at this idea, right? If you take... What?
All things considered, it's nice for Maxime because pieces are getting traded off the board. Okay, that checkmate would be disastrous, but if he can trade off more pieces, it leaves Hikaru with less to work with in the resulting position.
Yeah, Maxime defending well, and in fact, if the pieces are traded, not only does Hikaru have less to work with, but white might have more to work with here because the A5 pawn is the first target that's hanging.
Yep, and wait, can you... So Hikaru gives up the pawn, but has queen E3 check ideas. Is that worth it? So Maxime decides, yeah, I'm not taking it.
Yeah.
But maybe you could have.
Yeah, Maxime believed him. Maybe white could have taken there. But either way, these guys have gotten an endgame that you see kind of you've seen before in an Italian, at least as far as the pawn structure goes. But who's better here?
I like Black's pawn structure better, so I would take Black because the long term of the position is such that Black is the one who can create a passed pawn. This is in some ways reminiscent of a Berlin where we talk about the double pawns not allowing you to create passers. Here, at some point, Black can play B6, protect D5, play C5, and start moving those pawns up the board. So that's actually a problem for Maxime going forward.
Yeah, and now with the queen on E6 defending D5, Robert's idea, is even more aggressive. B5 played rather than B6 for C5. Hikaru wants to trade here and then find a way to target the A4 pawn.
Yep, and he would like to trade queens on terms favorable to him. Where you would not want to trade queens is the F5 square. If white plays queen F5, you don't want to take and undouble the pawns, which is why Hikaru backs that queen up to E8. As you were pointing out, Danny, the A4 pawn could become a target. So if C5 becomes possible, it's not here. Queen takes D5 is check, loses the pawn. But then there could be some ideas with winning that outside pass pawn.
Hikaru playing shuffle here maybe feels like he lost the thread of his advantage, and he's going to take the peaceful repetition. Interesting stuff there. Seemed like Hikaru got a good position as Black in the Italian, so that might bode well for future games, but he does fail to convert and remains 1 point behind MBL.
Yeah, that was an excellent display of opening awareness and knowledge by Hikaru Nakamura. We didn't focus on it too much, but it felt like he was never in any danger whatsoever, and then he was the one with the better position with many different choices. And at some point, the evaluation bar dipped, so something went wrong for him, but it looked like a very nice game where with the black pieces, he was better from pretty much move 15 or so.
Yeah, and double surprising to that was that MBL was the one who initiated the Italian rather than sticking with the Berlin, which got him a victory the previous time he was white. But I wonder if that's a little bit of match strategy, because if MBL feels like he actually cracked the nut of the Berlin, he might be saving it for the faster time control, right? And not giving Hikaru as much time to adjust, because a little bit of meta five-head thoughts for you, Robert. If he keeps playing the Berlin, Hikaru's going to look it up at the break. right? Which is legal, and maybe try to improve. So maybe MVO's like, I got my W. I'm going to go back to this in the faster time controls and maybe distract him a little bit with the Italian for the rest of the 5 minute portion.
I'm with you there. And I also think that Hikaru is doing the same thing with the white pieces, where he keeps playing this closed little Sicilian line. And I really don't think he's going to keep this opening with him as we get to the faster time controls. It's a very maneuvering approach that hasn't really amounted to much for him, with the exception of, was it game one, where he had the bishop pair and had a really nice
Yeah.
position. But throughout this, now it's back into a Spanish territory, right? Look at this position.
Yeah, this was a Sicilian, but no, it's a Spanish. No, it's a Sicilian, right? Pretty funny stuff. We got 32,000 on Twitch. That's a lot of people watching, and 22,000 over on YouTube. Not to mention our foreign language partners. Thank you so much. Tuning into the Speeches Championship Final presented by Onjuno. By the way, you get 5% cash back with Onjuno with all your favorite purchases. Amazon, Netflix for Robert. He does a lot of shopping online this time of year. And definitely worth the switch. Click the On Juno button below the Twitch player if you happen to be tuning in from that site. All right, Knight H2. Hikaru trying to relocate his pieces over to the king side now that G6 has been played. I got my eye on some squares here.
Does anyone have Anatoly Karpov's phone number? Because I would love to call him and ask him, hey, Tolia, what's going on here? And, we know the general plans. White can consider pawn to f4, but you have to be careful, because if you play f4, e takes f4, that e5 square becomes black for the taking. White can also bring this knight into g4. But then the question is, what next? Is black considering the move f7 to f5? Not right now, because of White's bishop and knight and pawn e4 covering that square. But look at f6. If you can slowly get your pieces out, trade some of these attackers away, later in the game, you can consider the move f5. But I see the eval bar creeping up for Hikaru. That must mean that there's